Pokemon Rangers, people who harness the power of Pokemon and utilize them to help defend nature. They've appeared in the games, the anime, and even got their own manga, actually multiple of them. But are they true eco-warriors, or are they actually harmful to the world of Pokemon? Are they even effective in keeping the environment safe? Or are they no better than the average trainer that they claim to be different from? After digging through the entire history and going through every single mission within Pokemon Rangers, and as someone who has studied ecology and conservation, it's time I bring to you the answers to all these questions and more right now. Hi there, I'm Kurlik, and as always, I'm incredibly excited to bring this video to you, as I actually did work in natural resources amongst a number of different positions, but as Parks and Rec, and honestly, I worked under my superior ranger, who looked me dead in the eye and would say, "You're basically a ranger, let's be honest. You just don't do all the paperwork." So, without further delay, and with my past experience, let's get started, as I have personal experience with some of the stuff that we're going to go over today regarding the Pokemon Rangers. Now, let's begin with explaining what a Pokemon Ranger is. They are strictly stated to not be Pokemon trainers, as their goals and methods for interacting with Pokemon are a little different. In fact, they typically only have one Pokemon, otherwise known as their partner Pokemon, with them at all times, and they don't go into a Pokeball. This Pokemon has been trained into a high level and will usually not be sent out for direct battle with other Pokemon. Instead, they will have these Pokemon assist the Ranger through powering up energy or utilities that the Ranger has in their capture styler. Alternatively, the partner Pokemon may even distract wild Pokemon with attacks that are not directly harming, or at least they claim to be. This is otherwise noted in the games as a Pokemon assist, and the Pokemon styler even quote-unquote absorbs or mimics the power of any Pokemon the styler has captured. And don't worry, that's a lot of information, but we'll explain the capture styler later and how beautiful that specific piece of tech actually is. So far, we already have a strong understanding of how they function, the Rangers that is, in the most basic sense. One Pokemon as a partner, and that Pokemon is kept out of harm's way as much as possible with the goal of not harming your partner or any other Pokemon in a conflict. This is already a huge point in favor of the Pokemon Rangers, but there's an issue. We can claim that Rangers aren't harming any other Pokemon and keeping them at their best interests, but has it always been that way? What have they done, or what are they currently doing to keep the environment safe, and have there been any major consequences? To help us answer these questions, let's begin by looking at the Ranger School, and don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with math lessons, but we will see what they are being taught, which will allow us to judge their actions a little better and fairer in general, at least on a surface level for now. Most Pokemon Rangers begin as student Rangers of the Ranger School. This school is a boarding school where many people from the world come to learn to become either Pokemon Rangers, operators, or mechanics. This school is well known for its ability to produce successful Rangers, and as a student Ranger, you, the player, are given special capture stylers that have limited abilities. So, I mean, that's a great thing to make sure that people who are attending the school don't immediately have all the power in the world to control a Pokemon. This school, to my knowledge, is only seen in Shadows of Almia within the Almia region, but we can make assumptions that Rangers from Guardian Signs and the original Ranger games would have had schooling here, or at least similar schooling, especially as the principal of this Ranger school was childhood friends with the individual who created the capture styler, allowing his dreams to come true. Actually, all of their dreams to come true. Lamont Splendidocious, otherwise known as Principal Lamont, was childhood friends with Professor Hastings and Chairperson Irma, all childhood friends with strong dreams. Lamont's dream was to start a school. This dream came true when Hastings developed the capture styler and Irma started the Ranger Union. Lamont's school was then used to teach students about Pokemon and how to preserve nature, which is the goal of the Pokemon Rangers. He wrote his dreams in a special journal hidden in the hideaway underneath where the Pledge Rock stands in the present day. Lamont's favorite saying is, "Always remember to keep on smiling." I digress. From what I can find, the majority of the games are more focused on the actual mechanics and actions you have control over, but by looking into the Pokemon Ranger comic episode 1, of the double mission manga, which the double missions are something that exists in the games, we get the following regarding a young man by the name of Lunik. Lunik releases his Crocodile and states that in addition to depending on Pokemon who happen to be there, a ranger must risk their life. He states that rangers are different than trainers, who capture Pokemon with Pokeballs and raise them. Unlike trainers, a ranger can only have one Pokemon on hand and must release any others after using them. He states that rangers think of the land and Pokemon as nature, and as such, it must stay that way. Since he loves nature, the young man states that he will use even himself to save it. Also, I'm saying young man because this is all a direct quote. Thank you, Bulbapedia. The young man notes that the ranger code states that he must stay for 30 minutes to confirm that the building is fully extinguished, which, in what I've been taught, there isn't any real definitive time that you have to sit and stay for a fire to be put out, but I was also not a firefighter. I had forensics education and natural resource training, but you just kind of make the best call and stick to that consistently while adapting to every scenario. So, you know, do with that what you will. In fact, though, this was the only time in which I could directly find any direct code of conduct for the Rangers. We can, of course, assume that there is a full book or code of conduct for them, as they can then act consistently through all the mediums as the Rangers are apt to do, though I have to admit that it is personally frustrating for me when they skip past all the lessons in the manga as well. This doesn't affect the stories or anything, I'm just a bit of a glutton for knowledge, and obviously I had to do research for this video. Though lucky for us, there is one way to find out what these lessons are indirectly, but we'll get there after completing our understanding of the school itself. And to clear this up now, Rangers in real life will have different roles depending on their location. And I mean that as far as even the United States and state to state. For example, Rangers in the state of Wisconsin currently have no legal authority. That is left entirely to the role of wardens, who basically have the same level of power as a sheriff, who complete water or land patrols and are stationed between a number of different locations during and after their education and training, which would be done at a fort. Either way, I would equate Pokemon Rangers themselves to being more along the lines of, like, wardens in real life, as far as I'm aware within the state of Wisconsin. Though there is an opportunity to learn and grow more as you then show off your skills even further as a Pokemon Ranger in order to become what is known as a top Ranger. This is a Pokemon Ranger with extraordinary skills. There are only 12 top Rangers in the entire world, 4 of whom are based in Almia. Top Rangers are given the Fine Styler, which is an updated capture styler with a charge function. Charge functions can result in additional or more powerful effects. They also have the ability to assign themselves missions and take on missions alone. They do not report to any Ranger base, but report directly to Irma at the Ranger Union. There is a similar rank known as Top Operators who help Top Rangers with their missions. Apparently, a Top Operator is often assigned to a Top Ranger. Known Top Operators are Rhythmy, Linda, and Marcus. So it kind of makes sense. You would want to make sure that you have somebody that you communicate to on the regular just in case an emergency occurs or anything along those lines, in which you need to make sure that somebody can come save you, or if you need backup. It's pretty straightforward. Though, this doesn't really have much of a comparison, and at this point, we've definitely began to dip more and more into info on the capture stylers. So before we dive into what the Pokemon Ranger codes of conduct might be, and how those help the environment, how about we look into what capture stylers are and how they actually work. A capture styler is a device invented by Professor Hastings and used by Pokemon Rangers as previously stated. It allows them to temporarily take command of wild Pokemon, and it also has built-in phone capabilities, so you can ring your mom when you're in danger. Yeah, it is similar to a remote-controlled toy top. You know, Beyblade, let it rip, baby. Although a spinning top-like device itself is called a capture disc, which is launched and controlled from the main device. Again, Beyblade. As the capture disc of the styler loops around a wild Pokemon, it leaves a trail of beams that transmits friendship to wild Pokemon. Yes, actual friendship. This will make the wild Pokemon more inclined to help the Pokemon Ranger. If the beams are broken by Pokemon attacks, the Capture Styler may take damage or even break. Now, the Styler can level up and gain more energy with use. And again, yes, you did hear that correctly. The Capture Styler transmits friendship to wild Pokemon. This is not your average everyday Pokeball, as those might capture Pokemon, but any caught Pokemon are not instantly friendly with you. You do have to raise them and gain their trust. Instead, through the use of a Capture Styler, you are somehow communicating with Pokemon and convincing them to be your friend, asking them to grant some of their power to you and partner together for a greater cause. In other words, we have something that is theoretically more communal and cooperative with Pokemon and nature itself, or if you're a Pokemon Ranger, you would literally just say more cooperative with nature itself, because, you know, they consider Pokemon and nature the same thing. Because in the end, though, the Pokemon ultimately gets a choice here. Whereas with a Pokeball, you are forcing a Pokemon into a Pokeball once you have weakened them. That is, unless the Pokemon willingly gets caught, and that's an entirely different story. To add to all of this, the terminology used for the Vatanage, well, that is a weird word. Styler, being able to open up a Pokemon's mind to friendship after they have been exposed to the Shadow Crystal is very similar to the terminology of opening up the door to a Pokemon's heart during the purification process of Shadow Pokemon, something that you would find in Colosseum XD Gale of Darkness, and is typically something that you would see when you are purifying a Pokemon again, or in the event of, let's say, Celebi is trying to reverse the shadow of their heart. In Pokemon Ranger Heatran Rescue, a character by the name of Ben lost his Capture Styler when he fell into a river and Team Rocket found it. When James tried to use it, it didn't work, and Ben explained that this was because not only one has to bond with the target Pokemon, but a Ranger's Styler can only be used by the Ranger assigned to it and nobody else. Now, this wasn't always the case, and people have stolen and used Capture Stylers in the past, modified them, so on and so forth, which this implies that Hastings made appropriate changes after that event occurred, which we'll kind of briefly mention later on. As a side note, the Capture Styler also has its own Pokédex called the Ranger Browser, which may display the number of friendship loops typically required per Pokemon, their type, their field move, and what type of assist they provide. By now, though, we can now move on and talk about the different types of Capture Stylers. The School Styler is given to students of the Ranger School, known as Student Rangers. It was developed to teach Student Rangers how to perform the basic tasks of a Pokemon Ranger. Due to its purpose, it has limited capabilities and does not come with the function to use Pokemon assists. In other words, you're just spinning your loops around Pokemon and hoping that you don't need any additional help, especially as you shouldn't need any help. You are at the school where everything should be a safe environment. After graduating from Ranger School, Student Rangers become Area Rangers and are given a new Capture Styler. Area Rangers I would like to compare to the idea of when you are still in school as a warden, at least to my knowledge, where you are then assigned to specific areas for patrol routes to just make sure everything's okay while you're still being educated until you complete your full graduation. Except you're not still going through the schooling as a Pokemon Ranger, I do suppose. Though, unlike the School Styler, it allows Rangers to use Pokemon Assists. This is the only one available in the Pokemon Ranger original game. Once an Area Ranger becomes a Top Ranger, though, they receive the Fine Styler. This Styler appears to have similar functions, except the new Power Charge. The Power Charge has 2 levels, and each one has more friendship power than the last. It has a different design, as it is attachable to the waist. A one-of-a-kind styler, the Vatanage Styler, is used as part of Operation Brighten. This styler allows a ranger to befriend a Pokemon under hypnosis, unlike previous stylers. It is a fine styler powered up with shards from the Tears of Princes. Getting power from actual gems themselves allows this styler to befriend even Pokemon who have closed up their minds. Now, the Tears of Princes is actually, it's important, but it's not Rangers, right? I'll still go over what is known as the King of Almia and the 3 Princes in their story. Long ago, there was an old king who ruled over all of Almia. The king of Almia had 3 boys, each of them crowned as a prince. The king was a kindly one who sought and thought of only peace for his kingdom. All he desired was harmony among his people and Pokemon. But the 3 princes, being young and full of vigor, failed to restrain themselves. They fell into acrimony and fought with wild and reckless abandon. The old king, in much anguish and after great contemplation, banished the princes. The eldest son, cloaked in a raiment of red, he sent to a volcanic land. The second son, clad in fineries of yellow, the king sent to a desert land. The youngest son, dressed in liveries of blue, he allowed to stay. With the eldest princess gone, the last child claimed the castle as his home. The king, once kindly, became racked by anger, solitude, and bitter guilt. Those feelings transformed his entire being. The darkness in his heart summoned forth the darkness in the world. The darkness in the world kept pulling and pulling. When deep darkness did arrive in the kingdom of Almia, the prince in blue stood. He willed himself to shine with light, a light that turned darkness into light. That feels like some Kingdom Hearts stuff right there. And what's most interesting about this is the blue gem is guarded by Lucario, the red gem is guarded by Heatran, and the yellow gem is guarded by Cresselia. Though there are more than just those, as you have the Shadow Crystal, otherwise known as the Dark Crystal, formed by the king from the folklore, and is protected by Darkrai in the Chroma Ruins. And shards from this crystal are used to hypnotize Pokemon. Though through the power of the 3 gems, they are used to transform the Shadow Crystal into the Luminous Crystal. And now it sits atop, with the other 3 gems, at the top of All True Tower, which became known as Peace Tower. I kinda makes sense, all true, altruism. And now, thanks to the Pokemon Rangers, they keep these crystals safe. And Professor Hastings even assures of this to the Guardians. To follow this, in Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs, a new type of styler is introduced now that we're back to talking about stylers. This styler is designed similar to a watch. Unlike other stylers, it actually lacks a name. And like the Fine Styler, it possesses the Power Charge ability. It also has a voice navigation that will advise the player from time to time throughout their adventure and seems to have a personality of its own. First shown during Nema's upgrades to it, and last shown when it broke the 4th wall near the end of the Heatran mission. This styler, due to Nema's upgrade, is capable of utilizing Ranger signs, and we'll talk about those later. After seeing a sign, Voice Nav will tell the player to record the sign into the styler, and from then on, the styler can use Ranger signs to call on Pokemon. These were all almost called, all of these different capture stylers, loop-de-loopers, as they were in Professor Hastings' original blueprints, which is absolutely goofy. In addition, the capture styler rivals the Pokédex in sturdiness and immunity to all conventional dangers that could be recreated by Pokemon attacks, such as water, fire, and electricity. It is even shown to be able to work with interference to radio signals in Pokemon Ranger Deoxys Crisis. Solana states that this is because it is hermetically sealed to prevent any conventional shock or damage from reaching the capture styler's inner workings. However, in the second Ranger game, Crawford says that the crazy heat is interfering with his styler, and the third Ranger game, Seawater got into the styler and interfered with some of its functions. So, not all of them are perfect. With all that out of the way, let's dig into what some of you may actually be incredibly excited about, and that would be literal Ranger signs, also known as invalids or emblems. These are only featured in Pokemon Ranger Guardian signs, of course, as per the name. They allow players to draw symbols on the ground with their capture styler to literally summon Pokemon, such as even the legendary beasts and the Eon Duo. Just draw a little picture on the ground and you can summon a legendary Pokemon to assist you wherever you are. It does not matter. Anywhere in the world, just bring them here. Further explained in the Pokemon series, the Ranger sign is a way to summon Pokemon the user captured in the past. The Ranger sign made a brief appearance in the second part of the Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs animated special, where it was sought after and acquired by the Pokemon Pinchers. So yes, you can actually literally steal Pokemon signs that might exist in the real world regarding certain legendary Pokemon. And we'll talk about Pokemon Pinchers and other evil gangs within the Pokemon Ranger franchise soon enough, but through the stylers that were used by them and altered, they were able to, as the games and main baddie stated, capture the legendary Pokemon, which were said to otherwise be virtually impossible to capture, and then he was planning on using them to lay waste to all of Fjord. And I gotta say, that's pretty freaking bad. This means that they have the legendary beasts allied, technically not by force, not by misunderstanding as other evil individuals have done, but by friendship. And that doesn't sound like a big deal until you remember that this is Pokemon and friendship is power for Pokemon, literally. And the styler relies on that bond between man and Pokemon to exist in order to draw upon their power. A cataclysmic power that these legendary beasts are technically using at their own free will to complete the plans of their evil friend, such as destroying entire radio towers. This is a level of severity similar to Mewtwo Mega evolves under Giovanni's command, and this power was just free for anyone with a styler to use until the adjustments were made to only allow registered trainers, or rather rangers, I apologize, to use them. But I'm sure there's workarounds. There's always a workaround because plot. Honestly, outside of this, thanks to the updates to the capture stylers having to be registered to a specific individual and having to have a bond with a Pokemon, we don't really have to worry about any of this unless a ranger does flip the script and decide to become evil. But that's just a worry we would have with anyone who can partner with Pokemon, whether you're a trainer, a ranger, or otherwise. But now that I brought up the topic of evil, let's talk about the Pokemon pinchers, otherwise known as Pokemon nappers. And no, not napper as in sleep, napper as in kidnapper, but for Pokemon. I know that's fairly obvious, but honestly, I have to point this out because I know you're either asleep listening to this, doing chores, working, playing a game, and that might otherwise slip past you. And two, I can't have that when I need you to suffer with me because that is a hilariously bad evil organization name. Oh no, here comes the Pokemon nappers. Whatever will I do? Would you like a pillow? Not enough of my sarcasm for now. Let's go over the info we do know about them. They operate in the Oblivia region, and though they appear to be led by Red Eyes, Blue Eyes, and Purple Eyes, they're actually controlled by a secret society called the Society, and that is with a TEA at the end of it, which, to be fair, the direct translation of their name is the Tea Party, which is kind of dope, I'm not gonna lie. They are seen on Sophian Island, where they are having a tea party together and are thought to be nice people, until later it's discovered that the group is responsible for controlling the actions of the Pokemon pinchers. They were a group of thieves many years earlier, but faded into obscurity as they aged. They revived their group and took control of the Pokemon pinchers in hopes of obtaining eternal youth, which eternal youth, or even just staying alive indefinitely, immortality, has only been something that I've seen maybe twice, but I obviously, in your mind, obviously likely just go straight to Lysander and his efforts with Xerneas and Evital and the Ultimate Weapon, in addition to, of course, AZ and Eternal Floette. But to think that eternal youth was something that was brought about in Pokemon and we haven't really seen it again is kind of wild, actually. But we'll dig into all of that in a moment because this does go further. They are known for controlling Steelhead and for vaporizing Dulce Island in Oblivia, and they are found in Sky Fortress. And yes, they did absolutely destroy Dulce Island. And as such, in all of Pokemon history, as of this date, this is the only island in all of Pokemon that is completely destroyed by humanity. Because even Cinnabar does get kind of like messed up, but it's not completely destroyed. And I think there's an island that's just kind of left out in a future Pokemon game, unless that's just the same island that's left out. So yeah, the Pokemon Rangers working to stop these guys is pretty vital considering their complete disregard to the ecosystem. Also, one of them had a Mewtwo and one had Regigigas under their control to make matters all that much worse. I think the other two had like a Ditto and some other Pokemon that is not even remotely up to bat for comparison to the others. Now back to that plan for immortality, the plan was to use a person by the name of Sabio's armor, or rather a golden armor, which drags us into an entirely different group of people, as I glossed over them earlier, and we need to speak on them to understand what the heck is even happening here. The Steelhead. Steelhead are characters from Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs. They are found in the past and are members of Pokemon Pinchers in the present, where they are controlled by the Society and Purple Eyes. These Steelhead have a unique set of armor that has the ability to convey feelings to Pokemon in a similar manner to the Capture Styler. This gives them the ability to control Pokemon, however the user's bad feelings are also conveyed. There is also a set of golden armor that gives the wearers immortality. This armor has 5 pieces, being the 2 arm parts, the shoulders, the body, and the helmet. I guess the shoulders are counted as one singular unit. Either way, these armor pieces are divided between the Society and are later stolen by Purple Eyes. Also, every single time I say Purple Eyes, I have to hold back a smirk or laugh because all I can think about is I'm at soup, which the creator of that is called Purple Eyes. Classic internet at its finest. But I've mentioned this Purple Eyes over and over again multiple times, so who the heck is Purple Eyes? Well, he is the head admin of the Pokemon Pinchers. He appears in Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs and is a rather experienced archaeologist, so evil has education. Cool. At least they're not bumbling idiots just destroying things without knowing what they're destroying, but that makes them all that much more dangerous. Also, according to Red Eyes, Purple Eyes is the type to throw away something when he's done with it, as seen when he dumped Raiku's Invalith on Mount Layuda. Just does not care. I'm done with it. I don't care about it. You're not allowed to have it because it's my toy is essentially what this guy's all about. And in the post-game of Guardian Signs, Purple Eyes later appears in an extra mission featuring Arceus. After being questioned by the Ranger Union, Purple Eyes snapped, resulting in him becoming a nihilistic sociopath who, instead of wanting to rule the world, wishes to use Arceus to destroy all of humanity aside from himself and then recreate everything. When Arceus is captured by the player, Purple Eyes is dragged off to somewhere unknown by Arceus in order to receive judgment. You know, I wonder if Arceus is ever tired of having to deal with people like this, or any of the legendary Pokemon that have to deal with all the evil organizations for that matter. Volo, Cyrus, Ghetsis, Lysander, they all kind of just lean towards that same idea of absolute domination or even genocide, and I'm not even bringing in Giovanni for that matter. I mean, even the Elite Four within the Pokemon Adventures manga were nearly successful in doing just that. And by the way, you should go listen to my coverage of the entire Yellow arc if you want to hear more about that, because trust me, it's one of the best stories in all of Pokemon. So this actually revealed to us something very interesting about Arceus and the Capture Styler. Very similar to how we don't really get to see Arceus captured in any form of medium, at least canonically. This is one of the few times, alongside what we see in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl and what we see in the Pokemon Legends Arceus games, is Arceus is captured. But the difference between this and those games is Arceus directly decides to battle you, and especially in Pokemon Legends Arceus, it reveals that it is one of the many thousand arms and allows itself to be captured by you since you prove yourself to it. Whereas in this scenario, you're using the Friendship Styler to calm it down and technically capture it, quote unquote. You know, just having a fragment of a god, not a big deal, and being friends with it for that matter, because again, this isn't like your average Pokeball. This is straight up becoming friends with whoever you quote unquote capture. Either way, I would like to assume that it would otherwise be essentially impossible to use the Styler on Arceus, which is a little bit relieving because you have to form that bond. And newsflash, Arceus doesn't really have a great bond with humanity most of the time. Now, there are more than just the Pokemon poachers, but they all kind of just fall under the same basic idea. There's Go Rock Squad and Fiore, who have evil versions of the Capture Styler called the Power Styler and aim to capture the legendary beasts. Team Dim Sun operated under the disguise of an oil company, so you can see where that travesty was already going. But on top of that, they wanted to control all the Pokemon in the Almia region. And then there's Team Debonaires, who are ex-members of Team Dim Sun, who have the same goal. Though, after the player beat their leader, Kincaid's Gliscor and Drapion, Professor Hastings appears and tells Kincaid that his plans would have failed anyway, as the darkness in his heart is nothing compared to the goodness in the hearts of the entire population of Almia. A very sweet little ending to that. Let's begin diving into Ranger Quest. Now, I'm not going to tell you every single one in excruciating detail, but I am going to give you the bits of relevant info that allows us to understand the values and principles of the Rangers, or even rather the jobs that they honestly get down to. And let me tell you, the tasks of these missions vary greatly. We'll also talk about full missions later, as those are more of the main story. Some missions are simply you investigating areas of interest or concern. One such example is when a little girl asks rangers to investigate a bridge near the school to be sure there isn't a ghost under it. Paired with this is another possible quest early in the career, is to spend time calming down a milk tank that a young boy was told by his family to go milk, but it was getting a little bit angry and not willing to be, it was not willing to have people near it. Seems like pretty simple community service type tasks while also handling very easy Pokemon. But then it already begins to upgrade once we complete mission 3 of the main game, allowing us to access more of these side missions or ranger quests, as I stated. If I make that mistake, just forgive me if I mix them up a little bit. But you work to bring an old woman to see some Combi after a forest fire chased them away, but then you also clean up logs in Vian Forest and wooden crates that have washed ashore. And let me tell you, I've had to deal with exactly that in my time working at a state forest. And while at least cleaning up things that do wash ashore, such as any of the debris, is easy but time consuming, I do have a story for you regarding log cleanup and taking care of all of that. And yes, it involves a chainsaw because I was certified under the DNR to use a chainsaw. Now, during my time, I got taught how to use a chainsaw, and I was often left alone to run the forest. And towards the end of one of my shifts, it is downpouring, and one guy comes up to me on his bike and he's like, "Hey, a limb from a tree fell down, blah blah blah, I ran over here." I'm like, "Oh, sweet, yeah, I'll take care of that. I can chop that up and call it a day." Well, I grab just some basic tools, get in my truck, and I head on over to the route. I get there, and there is not a limb, but a, full-on, may as well have been its own tree that fell down in the middle of the road. I look at it, sigh, and drive all the way back to get the chainsaw, my safety gear, because, oh my goodness, you always want your safety gear with a chainsaw in case something happens, and then drove all the way back just to chop right, or rather not chop, but use the chainsaw on it, kick it a little bit so that way I could get to the rest of it and finish using the chainsaw on this tree and then pushing it off to the side. And because this was super early on into me having full certification to use it, it took some time, and yeah, I got soaked. So great times. But luckily, our Pokemon Rangers don't have to have chainsaws or chainsaw certification or anything along those lines. Guess what? You just send out a Bidoof or something to go ahead and take care of it, or have a timber lift it up and move it over. The sheer amount of convenience that holds by partnering with Pokemon that are already there in nature is immense. Now, moving forward to quests you can complete after Mission 4, we have more crates being left behind by deviants, a rock that has to be moved or destroyed, and a Cranidos being chased by a war turtle. And I'm going to say this now, that Cranidos likely deserves it, considering that they usually just headbutt everything and everyone that they see, but it's also not okay for this to just happen, especially as this is a wild fossil Pokemon, and it won't be the first one that I mention that is likely very confused and potentially even very scared. And when you drive an animal like that from one area to another one, and you keep moving it around and it's not finding food, it gets more desperate, it gets scared because it's being attacked, it is more likely to destroy more stuff. So it makes sense that you would need to resolve this conflict and figure out what to do with this fossil Pokemon. And after Mission 5, you find an Eevee that an old couple lost as it just kind of got out and ran away from home. Kind of like how maybe a dog might do, or a cat, whatever you might say. You perform a wellness check on someone's mother as well, and you prove that Luminion do exist in Puel Sea for a fishing kid that nobody believes caught a Luminion at any point. There are plenty of other quests going forward, but we should start noticing a pattern already. We have a mixture of normal police work in addition to natural resource work, leaning more towards conservation than preservation so far. The difference between these is that conservation is us working with nature as we make ourselves a part of it, but we do use it up and then refuel it as we keep it alive and healthy, while preservation would be leaving things as they are completely and doing everything we can to preserve or protect it as it is. There's nothing wrong with either of these as long as they're done right, and I'm definitely more of a preservation type personality. That felt really redundant. Either way, let's keep going through these side quests and see what else that we can find. After mission 6, you bring someone a nose pass, you bring someone else an oddish for research purposes, you find a Pokemon that stole lunch, actually multiple times, and help a Turtwig that is in trouble. Again, very much lining up with normal ranger duties with extended research efforts as we can see now. Almost like a surveyor, and rangers working with surveyors is not uncommon. It just seems like it's been mashed into one role. And of course, I've even investigated food being stolen from campsites before, as we had raccoons that stole from a site, and there was a kid that thought someone walked onto their site and stole from them. And when I walked there, you could see the fat, like, tail drags or belly drags that a raccoon leaves behind, and all of the wrappers and food that have bite marks leading into the woods. And no, not human bite marks. No, there was not a rabid caveman child running around that nobody never knew about. No, these were straight up, like, raccoon bites. And the raccoons there were not shy. They would actually stand up and peek at me from behind the trees as I would drive the ranger truck around. So that was fun. Also had to get one out from under an RV because it went into someone's RV/trailer. That was also a different situation I'm not going to talk about here. Now, things change after becoming a top ranger, and the quests definitely have a strong change to them. We bring people Cherim, bring someone a muck because they want the effervescent aroma of one, and it always eludes them, return a pen to a reporter, and then there are 3 missions that definitely belong to higher level rescue. One is helping a Shieldon that is stuck on Peril Cliffs, and if the name of those cliffs have any meaning whatsoever, that Pokemon will die without assistance and people should not be going up it whatsoever. Then you have to complete a wellness check on a member of Team Dim Sun who just really needs food. And lastly, you set fire to 3 leaf piles within the ranger school. Controlled fire brush burning is a skill that is strictly kept to professionals. I believe, if I remember correctly, I had the opportunity to learn how to do it. I would have had to sign up for another class, and that would have been in the summertime area to learn all of that. And I believe it would have been like a 2-week straight course with a lot of hands-on learning. And that sounds like a really short amount of time, but you are spending hours and hours every single day taking in that info and then immediately showing that you know what you're doing with it with professional firefighters and other people within the field who know what they're doing. Don't take my word at verbatim. I am not up to date on any changes that have occurred within that education system over the last couple of years. Either way, it would all make sense for rangers or Pokemon rangers to have this fire training included to some degree, especially as, again, you could just have a water type Pokemon partnered with you at any moment in the area. From here, the majority of our quests are the same. Pokemon rescue, wellness checks, people rescue, bringing Pokemon to people, clearing areas, Pokemon research, resolving enraged Pokemon or problematic Pokemon, bringing items back to people, and endearingly helping your parents here and there. Now, in Guardian Signs, this does expand to finding berries, so now you are also working with the flora, and you also destroy illegal traps that were left behind by the Pokemon pinchers and investigating thefts of items. But this extends even further to these special missions that are in the manga, or at least represented by the manga, or special episodes that had expanded upon them. But let's actually go over the main missions of the Rangers. These are going to be pretty straightforward all in all, but they give us a very direct understanding or bits of information that we can use to understand how the education or lessons may have gone, or rather that Ranger code. One of them is capture Larry's Halo, which has fled into the Lyra Forest. Even though this is a novice rank mission, it is your first job. Don't be afraid of failure, just go for it. Encouraging, well, courage into the Rangers. You don't have time for hesitation. You don't have time for worrying about failure. You have a job that you need to do. Go for it and do your best. The next one is, and this is all from the original Ranger games, your mission is to safely escort Professor Hastings to Fall City. You're expected to overcome any challenges you encounter with intellect and courage. Building off of that first mission, you now have to add intellect into your repertoire. You can't just push through the challenges. You need to think critically and be able to come up with solutions that are able to, well, be the best possible outcome. From here, the next mission is to take the place of Fall City's Rangers and help the citizens solve their problems. What might seem trivial to you may be a huge crisis for the people involved. And that shows compassion. And that can actually be applied to the average day-to-day life. When you think about someone having a bad day, sometimes when they're all angry, when they're incredibly sad, it may not even be the exact thing in front of them or the thing that they are complaining about that is the real problem. The number of times that I've had to talk with people who are overwhelmed and then just kind of break down because, I don't know, Actually, I'll give a great example. Recently, my fiance, which, yes, I can actually say that now. I haven't announced that anywhere. I mean, I haven't announced it on YouTube properly yet, outside of on a live stream, which you should be there for live streams. But either way, my fiance, she just was having an overwhelmed, like, week or day or something. I'm not really sure. And she kind of just threw a fit, for lack of a better term, over the fact that she didn't have tomato sauce for her pizza. And it wasn't like she didn't have, like, tomato sauce for the pizza itself. The pizza was a frozen one. She just didn't have extra tomato sauce to, like, dip it in. And knowing that she was just kind of having a rough week or a rough day, I didn't really ask what the additional issue was. I just kind of sat there, let her kind of, hug and let it out a little bit because something's clearly wrong. And I just put on, like, pants that I could wear in the outer net in the real world, put on my jacket, and she looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm gonna go get you some tomato sauce." She goes, "You are?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's just go, let me go ahead and do that. Leave the pizza in the oven, just turn it off, and then I'll be back, all right?" And done. There's a lot of people who feel like the world might be falling on them because they're just overwhelmed with 100 different things, or maybe one big event happened and now something small seems like a massive crisis to them. So, treat people with kindness, do what you can, and that's what this little bit is trying to tell our Rangers. So now you have courage, intellect, and compassion. The next mission is that there is a massive outbreak of Grimer in the underground waterworks. The Grimer cannot be allowed to roam free. Capture them all. This is a contamination issue. Can you imagine Grimer roaming free in the waterworks system where everything is supposed to be filtered already or supposed to be taken care of, and now you're getting diseases that cannot be properly resolved because it's in the direct waterworks that are going to people instead of something that could be filtered out by any of the water purification factories that may exist. So that was just more of a general mechanics thing. From there, you have to resolve when somebody ends up getting abducted. You have to handle a rock fall that happens on Croca Tunnel, as it must be reopened immediately as it is one of Fiore's major, I don't know why I said it like that, major traffic arteries. So you start working into the ideas of, again, where people are coming and going. Again, very similar to my story on the state forest that I worked at, and I had to deal with the tree that had fallen down because there were cars that are supposed to go through there. Then you have a senior citizen who has wandered into the deepest part of the Lyra forest where humans rarely set foot. Already, that's a whole issue of itself. I've already had to try and find people in the middle of the woods, and you don't have cell reception, and it starts getting dark. That is incredibly dangerous, especially for senior citizens if they have any signs of dementia or anything along those lines that could put them into greater amounts of danger, let alone if it's really hot or really cold. As such, the citizen needs to be rescued as soon as possible. Take care not to get lost yourself. If it's a trail, that's one thing. But if this is the full-on forest where there are dangerous Pokemon roaming around. The Rangers may consider Pokemon their friends. Trainers may consider Pokemon their friends, but they are still to be respected with the full amount of danger that they can hold. I mean, they put beware signs all up over Alola. And not beware as in, oh, beware of this. I mean the actual beware Pokemon, because it is one of the biggest threats in Alola. And finally, before we actually get into the special ranger missions, there is one mission that states that there have been some massive quakes as if the very earth were enraged. Rivers of lava flow, sowing destruction. Uncover the cause of these calamities and save the historically precious jungle relic. Again, that goes back to artifacts or even ancient history when there were pieces of boats that washed ashore at the forest that I worked at. You weren't allowed to remove those. In fact, my job was to instead find a way to put caution tape and posts around it. And then you let like historical boat societies and stuff like that take care of it. And their response was often, yeah, no, you just let it be, which is wild to think about. But as long as nobody's getting hurt, then you're fine. And by the way, yeah, you had to have caution signs because there were rows of like 1-inch thick rebar coming out of this sand, and that's how we would discover it. But how about we do finally move on to these special ranger missions? These special missions involve legendary or mythical Pokemon and can only be accessed after completing the main game. This includes recovering a Manaphy egg from criminals, calming a Deoxys that has appeared before it hurts Pokemon and people, and capturing Celebi before an evil team can in order to protect it. Though this also extends to capturing Mew for Professor Hastings' research and for the honor of a ranger. And once again, we see a simple theme: protecting people and Pokemon and conducting research regarding Pokemon. Very consistent here and in the Shadows of Almia game. But what I think is most interesting is that if you transfer any rescued Pokemon, such as Riolu and Darkrai from Shadows of Almia, you get the following message on a Wonder card. Almia's Ranger Union requests that you protect this Riolu. Watch over Riolu carefully. Once you receive this Pokemon, discard this card. This is done to keep the Pokemon out of the wrong hands. It also serves as an incredibly interesting tie-in to the main games, as this means that the Rangers will hand off Pokemon to people that are deemed trustworthy. Now, there are tons of additional special missions or just general missions in like all of these games, but one of these special missions is one where you calm down Dialga, who is not in the right state of mind and is disrupting the flow of time. You're put on a timer, and if you don't complete the mission within the timer, you're repeatedly reset, sent back in time over and over and over again. And once you do complete it, you're told that you astonishingly completed the capture of Dialga in a total of 10 seconds, which is pretty freaking sick, I have to admit, because imagine having to calm down the god of time as part of your job on top of everything else as a top ranger, and you're sent through a time loop until you succeed. Wonder if you could somehow get paid extra for that. Of course, my brain goes to money for that for some reason. A similar event happens with Palkia as it starts to distort the fabric of space in Almia, causing Pokemon to appear in places they usually don't, and other odd things such as fishermen fishing by sand and lava. This also causes people to go to a different place when they enter things such as doors. Just go through a door and you're at the top of a skyscraper, just cartoon style. Now, the player will have to capture Palkia in the basement of Hippowdon Temple so that it could be treated and the distortions could be fixed. You are treating a god of space for whatever ailment or confusion or mental affliction that it has in order to return everything to normal. Why is this so cool? Like, I don't mean to gush too much about this, saying everything's sick and everything's cool, but this is the type of stuff that we absolutely need to see more of in the main games, in my personal opinion. Another interesting one that I will just begin reading for you is that it is something that is very adorable and fun. Irma and Professor Hastings receive an invitation on behalf of the player. It turns out that Ollie and Elaine, characters within the story, are getting married. The player, Hastings, and the other Rangers come and celebrate, but Team Dim Sun remnants show up, trying to steal the bride's bouquet. It turns out the bouquet is none other than a shaman. Team Dim Sun wants to get it in order to sell the rare Pokemon for a huge amount of money to buy new weapons for the team. Shaman flees, and the player is assigned to return Shaman, whose tendency is to hide within flowers. To make things more difficult, there are flowers all over the town shaped like Shaman. This player, Hastings, and the other Rangers leave the couple behind. They are not the only ones looking though, as Team Dim Sun also wants to find Shaman. During the first encounter of the scared Shaman, the player will have to capture an Absol and an Umbreon. On this second encounter, the player will have to capture a Roserade and 2 Blossom. Also, this is in its own way a very adorable way now that I think about it, as Absol is the Omen Pokemon, but that doesn't mean negative. Omens can be positive, in addition to Umbreon representing the moon. And originally, there wasn't a phrase for I love you in Japanese. Okay, to clarify it, apparently during Japanese novelist Natsume Soseki's 1867 to 1916 is how long he lived, teaching years, he supposedly overheard a student translating I love you rather awkwardly into its literal and direct translation, which is the moon is beautiful, isn't it? And there we go, having Umbreon here. Then of course, Roserade and Blossom, those are Pokemon that have flowers, Roserade specifically being roses, romantic, and then Blossom, I don't know, I kind of imagine because of all the petals and everything that they like to throw around as well, potentially being like a flower girl or something along those lines. Though after that, Team Dim Sun manages to corner Shaman on the bridge, who out of anger attacks them. The player then has to capture it to calm it down, and after that, everyone returns to the wedding. Shaman will shower the place with flowers as a sign of gratitude and then disappear. Finally, in Guardian Signs, you get to see Deoxys one last time. Same goes for the Manaphy egg, and you run into the non-native Shaman again. And finally, you investigate an odd eruption at Faldera Volcano to find Heatran there as you rescue those who were left behind. If you transfer these special Pokemon, you will get the same request from the Union to protect the Pokemon you have transferred to whatever game you transfer them to. And of course, there are still 2 special missions. One features Giratina in both of its forms and takes place in the Oblivia Ruins. The mission requires the player to capture Giratina in its altered form, then the player must search the ruins for its Grisius Orb, and upon finding it, the player must take it back to Giratina and capture it again, now in its origin form. The other mission features the Pokemon of Myth and their creator. The mission requires the player to venture around the Sky Fortress and capture Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina in order to stop spatial distortions around the area. Once the player has done so, they must capture Arceus as well in order to calm its rage. Arceus, of course, is raging because of events that we have discussed in the past, as you would expect. Similar to why it just kind of hated humanity so much during the Arceus movie. It doesn't really have a good relationship thanks to humanity's actions. Who would have guessed? Now let's zoom out and leave the 3 main regions in which we find Rangers so we can look at how they function elsewhere. Why I want to do this is because they seem to have a strong authority in their own regions, if not the highest authority. This is not the same for the rest of the regions in the world, in which we find different forms of government, such as the Pokemon League or the Kahunas of Alola. Now, in the Pokemon the series, Solana, Kellen, Ben, and Jack Walker are Pokemon Rangers that have appeared in Pokemon this series and related media. Many episodes have featured other Rangers, and they generally keep an eye on an area and look after the Pokemon there. Some of these areas are restricted and have to be protected from poachers. However, as these Rangers train Pokemon normally, they may be more closely based on the trainer class than the Fiore and Almia Rangers. Solana, the female protagonist from the Pokemon Ranger game, first appeared in the Green Guardian. She helps Ash and his friends rescue an injured Celebi, which had blocked the cycling road with its protective vines. She later appears in Pokemon Ranger Deoxys Crisis Part 1 and Part 2, where she is involved in the incident with Deoxys, and again, together with Kellen, in Pokemon Ranger and the Kidnapped Railu Part 1 and Part 2. Ben, the male protagonist from Guardian Signs, appeared in the animated special Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs, of course, and the episode Pokemon Ranger Heatran Rescue Mission, and Jack Walker is the central character of Pokemon Ranger and the Temple of the Sea. Otherwise, they have been positioned to take care of swamps, answer to the Wildlife Bureau, or continue any of the other goals we have previously stated, and there's not a lot to dive into there. And then, of course, This changes even further when we begin to look at the Pokemon Ranger Trainer class. They debuted in Generation 3, and while in uniform, which is different, also have a length of rope with them, which is odd that they don't have the capture stylers, and then they also use Pokeballs with multiple Pokemon at their side, so they're starting to get very separated from what we know as Pokemon Rangers and are more Pokemon trainers. However, they are still primarily concerned with protecting wild Pokemon, keeping the environment safe, and making sure travelers do not get injured or lost when walking through the wilderness, as they mention in their battle dialogue. And they specialize primarily in grass-type Pokemon in Generation 3, and they often have healing items. In Generation 4 onward, they use a variety of powerful Pokemon similar to Ace trainers. In Pokemon Black and White and Black 2 White 2, they give out berries when you defeat them, and even educate you on nature while they're at it, unless they are encountered in the big stadium or small court, where they instead give out max repels. It's kind of like sitting here and going, hey, there's a bunch of mosquitoes over there. Take this repel, go mess with the environment and ozone, and hopefully Rayquaza doesn't beat you down. With this though, while there is technically far more to go over regarding the Pokemon Ranger games, the evil teams, or even the plot, I thoroughly believe that we have found that, of course, the Pokemon Rangers are true eco-warriors. In fact, they go even further beyond just being guardians of nature. I would argue that they are the perfect type of person within the world of Pokemon. I almost said trainer there. Now, of course, I speak on this as a biased individual, considering I, of course, love nature, and again, I worked to basically be just below a ranger in my time. In all seriousness, the Pokemon Rangers are true partners with Pokemon, typically only having one Pokemon they partner with while calling upon the aid of any other Pokemon that might be around, or even summoning their aid when they can through their guardian signs. They go beyond nature and aid people who need it, whether it involves nature or not. They ensure the safety of people and Pokemon everywhere they go, and assist in research of Pokemon while also educating the public on them. After all, that's why we show people Pokemon that they want to see within the games. And when everything hits the fan, whether it be with common or legendary Pokemon, the Rangers will do everything that they can to peacefully calm down the Pokemon and resolve the conflict. They protect entire islands from poachers and anyone else who would dare bring imbalance or destruction to the natural world, and do so without even having a proper Pokemon battle most of the time, meaning that no Pokemon on either side of the conflict has to get injured in the process, which is truly phenomenal. But with that, I know this was a shorter video. I'm going to tell you right now, I intend to work on the next set of shiny Pokemon inspirations, so I hope you're excited for that. And if you did enjoy, please make sure that you did subscribe, share this with other people, leave a comment about nature, share with me your favorite encounters with animals for that matter, or even your favorite Pokemon, or whatever your favorite trainer class is. Any of those things, as I love to read the comments, and if there's anything that I missed, let me know. Comments help boost a video in addition to watch time, so if you'd like, go ahead and check out another video of mine about ecology within the world of Pokemon, as I've gone through Kanto all the way through Alola, and guess what? I'm about to go to Pokemon Snap real soon. So with that, before we do go for today, you can always, if you so are inclined to do so, become a member of the channel on YouTube or Patreon for as little as $3 a month, which helps support videos like this and other in-depth deep dives into the world of Pokemon with real science and stories and so on and so forth. And as such, before we go, I am going to make sure that we go ahead and thank all the members of the channel with a member shout out right now. Starting with all of our Gods of Hope, co-founders of 14, Heals for Life, Biggins, Batty, Knit, Buzz, and Summer, with our champions, Andrew Mercy, Costa, and Joshua Biggins Wilson, with all of our Knights of the Court, Crumbo, Double, Shiny Gem, Zero, Biz Boys, Moth Romance, Vitey Lemon, Fix My Nurture, co-founders of 14, Wow, Annie Stone, Allen, Heals for Life, Blue Dalek, and Warren Epfel, with all the Wanderers, T-Baggins, Big Rosie 45, Domain Regato, Zach Arrowwood, Just Bad, Tone Shiner, Moms Versetti, Blue Gecko, Casablanca, Mercury XV, Nicole Manassian, Live R316, Matthew Kennedy, Mark Waclowski, Electro Lucario, Nick, Kristen, Sandwich Boss, Emmy, Brian Griffin, Real, Rick Basher, 45, AD, John W, 1M, S9, Star U, Will, Gibbo, Kevlar, Dadon, Wexy, Young, The Lawn, Estelle, The Olive Branch, Pisha, Salty Eggs, Dia, and Sanguinous TV, WDA, Young, Wada Young, Script, Noble 2, whatever this is, Venny Samaru, Vors, The Pink Hair, Saiyan, Max Supreme, Desporting Emperor, Glitch Queen 83, Wade Marling, Gilpin, Average Pokemon Fan, T-Day, No Offense, Michael Stein, Jay Gill, Grayson, Rob, Big Papa Couch, Bodson, Clips, Make Hell, Jace, James, Links, Ocean Man 7, Internet Person to look into, Rolando J. Calderon, Delinks, Tunkinator, Nori, Brett Richardson, Ethan Salzman, McJethro, PVT, Muhammad A, Sunset Star, Dominic Ziek, Fruit Punch Cloud, Pato Mareko, Commander Flyboy, JC, Brian Perez, Donkey Nug, Ada Karakak, Napoleon Bonaparte, Tulip, Tyler, Nath, Villain, Delta, Spartan, Andrea, Verlin, Leslie Lakes, Yuri, Chumple, Stiltskin, Freddy, 1, 2, 3, 4, Kenneth, Abidroth, Brandon, Crutchfield, Custard Bun, Dawson, Reed, Hotshot Games, Dine, Digger, Hackon H, Eve Seller, Crossbeats Gaming, Stars, That Angel Horace, Hashim Akamos, Sweetie Weber, Jingerman Jensen, Sam Wasabi, Handbook Dirks, Nathaniel Matthews, Jacob, Yaga the Demonic, Neko, Dunsey, Jonas, 00 Lemon, Dragalvian, Soldo Dolce, Datboy Frito, Zukier, Seth Coleman, Raxiel, Timid Warlock, Exushiki, Tom, Luigi the God, Funky Rowdy, Kid, Katuos, Alolan Figment, Delightful Nerd, Morgoth, the Stardies, Dragon Pulp, Lifting, Hings, Fat Tax, Arxes, Off Balance, Caden 42, PBOly, JBO Timeline, The Coppersmith Inc., Mina, Mori, Bogby, Schmidt, Jacob Thies, Lost Mysterio, Ponyboy 4444, Maisie, Whamma Wham, Crescelion, Joe Heron, Pika Miku, Not Plague HD, Snows Leaves, Jerry Rivera, Emir, Medico, TH73, Spurgalicious, Sydney, House, Abdallah Lottie, Dr. Jack the Hefted Anachronist, Turbo Fish, Zama, Thibs, 2341, Fart, B, Bob, The Fish, Eric Palayo Moreno, Bryden C, Anthony Wells, Bradley McDonald, Sammy, James Wilson, King Kobo, Boca Chris, Spoiled Cheese, Cool Breeze, Dylan Bear, Chorgon, Nick Garcia, C, Brett Miller, Riz Smith, Spooky Spirit, Riz, Sultan Kai, Michael Hayes, Gory Malcolm, Suki Satsuki, 232, The Black Dragon, Phantom Missions, Allison Warren, Seko, Kesso, Mythier, Mouse God, Gem, Ghost, Mix, Arabia, and Adam the Pokemon Weave, Clearly Milk, Widows, Karen, to Marco, Neil the Simon for Fossils, Marcus Hull, Yigan Cal 12 Food, Nix, You, Lamac, Dragon King, Just Dragon, Kagyo, Tsuki, Professor Bond, Night Owl, 707, Miss Zora, Dakota Couch, Brad Sundheimer, Drixel, Carl Jean, Hunter Owl, Hassan Kassam, Rebecca Connell Hune, Jappy W, Memento Mortal Corn, Marshy, Edward Kosowski, Fenneca Fox, Evil Chan, Panda Nerd, Spreeberg, Hag, Addy Cadabra, King Pie, Jack of the Frost, Precious, Snivy, Ruby, Addy C, Jacob Square, GJ Monk 23, Squidwater, Wyatt Smith, Gamer, Bad Dragonite, Just JM, Star S, MD, Horse the Cocktail, Hey Bell Yeet, Micah 626 Gaming, Muse, Arwell, Lumio, Gwendolini, Scanner 772, Andrew Frost, Peak Anonymous, Summer Sloth, Knock Nguyen, Ian Ray, Big and C9, Corner to Cobb, Jojo and Sealy King, the Forians guys, Daniel Tracy, Garrett Hoffman, Rosiv, Dylan Peters, Malachi Burkhart, Carlisle, and Heather Wiseman. Thank you all for being members of the channel. It supports the channel an immense amount. And if you can become a member and you want to hear your name at the end of every single video, please do consider becoming a member. It helps the channel immensely and helps me support creation of great videos. So with that then, as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't you think I would do, don't think I would do, please be nice to each other. I love you and I'll see you next time. Bye.